Hi everybody, and welcome again to our first person interview segment, a production each week of PressProsMagazine.com and sponsored by the Buckeye Insurance Corporation in Piqua and the Coverman Dickerson Agency representing Buckeye in Troy, Piqua, and Covington. This week our first stab at basketball for the 2010-2011 season, and our guest is a good friend and one of the venerable names in Miami County or Miami Valley coaching. Former head coach at Covington, won a state title at Bethel High School back in 2000. Former head coach of the Sydney Yellow Jackets, an assistant at Wayne, and now the head basketball coach again in the Cross County Conference at Newton High School. Steve Fisher is our guest. Thanks for the time. It is fun to talk basketball with you anytime.
I appreciate it, Sonny. Basketball is a good sport. Good to talk about it.
I wanted to call you venerable, but I've known you so long. And we've talked about so many things over the years, but you know, you're a good guy to talk on this particular topic of experience in coaching and guys of tenure. And I know a lot of people in the profession say there's no longer the appreciation for experience and tenure, given the fact that people's impatience. You take a job, they want to see you banging on the door for a district tournament within 5 years, and you know that's not realistic all the time.
Well, when I first started coaching, there was and I can't think of who said this, but Bob Hilsman and I used to laugh about it, is that there are peaks and valleys in coaching, and especially in small schools. You're going to run a series where you're going to have 2 or 3 good classes in a row, going to win a lot of games. You're going to hit a valley where you may not have the depth, or you may have just a player or two. So I think that the ESPN world demands the highlights and the ups all the time, and I don't think that's possible.
You know, some coaches call that the genetic eclipse, but it's a fact of reality. You don't always have 6'5", 6'6" in the middle, or a Matt Witt at point guard.
No, not and only a few of us are ever fortunate enough to even have that.
I've had coaches tell me, and you've been at this business 35 years now, and you remind me, or begin to remind me, of guys like Norm Person and Dick Kortekrax and some people like that who've given their life to coaching, and yet people like Norm would say, Carl York said to me one time, Hall of Fame coach from Proctorville, Fairlane, he said there'll never be a generation of coaches who spend 30 years at a school anymore because the community won't have it.
No, I think that the Don Hendersons and those guys who I grew up, idolizing, the Don Hendersons of the world who stayed at one school for years. We just talked about the LCC coach, Bob Sagerson, the guy that's been there for years and years. I just don't think that's going to happen anymore. This is my 4th school, in my 30-some years that I've been a head coach. I just don't see how any coach could survive at 35 years at one school anymore.
A lot of ground to cover with Steve Fisher, our guest this week on our first person interview. We'll be right back with more with Coach Fisher after this, and this message from the Coverman Dickerson Agency in Troy, Piqua, and Covington.
The Coverman Dickerson Agency, with offices in Troy, Piqua, and Covington, is pleased to be the sponsoring Buckeye Insurance Group agent for this first person interview. For farm, auto, and homeowner insurance, Coverman Dickerson is one of the area's fastest growing Buckeye providers, with a history of service and competitive rates. And we're also an outstanding source of coverage for families with young drivers. For farm, auto, and home policies, call the Coverman Dickerson Agency, proud to represent Buckeye Insurance Group.
Welcome back, everybody, to our second half of our first person interview with Steve Fisher tonight, the head basketball coach at Newton High School. Familiar situation for you here, because you're again in the situation of coming in and building a program or rebuilding a program. Stability has been an issue here over the last 4 or 5 years. We talked a little bit about that, but you're a guy that's got the experience. You've been here before, and you know it's a daunting task.
Well, we did that at Bethel, obviously. When I went to Bethel in 97, they had won 8 games in 6 years. We're not at that situation here necessarily. I've been the girls coach here the last 2 years. What we did to rebuild the girls program is went back, worked on the elementary, really got it established, got our junior high in line, and started to see some progress in the girls program. So last spring, when Bob Hilsman and the administration came and asked me to take over the boys program, we really saw the same issues. So what we've done there is really tried to establish some continuity in the program, even down into the 3rd and 4th grades, where 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th are doing many of the same things that we're doing in a watered-down version at the high school level. Terminology in junior high and in elementary, drills and different things that we're trying to do, trying to really lead into what we believe can be a very successful program here.
I don't have to tell you this, and anyone who's ever played, it's very difficult, and this is the case, as we mentioned a moment ago, some instability, the fact that your kids here, your varsity program, will now have had 3 coaches in the span of 5 years. That's tough to pick up the pieces and move on, move ahead.
And when I had a parents meeting here a couple weeks ago, that's one thing that I said, that our juniors and seniors have had 3 different coaches and 3 different styles in 3 years. And what we've been really happy with here is that our varsity and JV have bought into what we're trying to do here, which is a completely different style than what they played last year. Opposite ends of the spectrum completely. But they really have done a nice job of buying into what we're trying to do. 2010,
as we sit here today, and it marks an anniversary for you, and a very special, good memory, an anniversary in your coaching career, but this marks the 10th year since you won a state title with that Bethel program back in 2000 with the likes of Matt Witt, Matt Plunkett. Tell me a little bit about what that means to you now 10 years removed, because time goes fast.
Well, it's almost unbelievably fast. I remember when we were going over, before we played there, I was very, very fortunate at Bethel to have John Whitehouse on the staff there as the athletic director. And John had been through that in the '78 Bethel team. And he told me at that time, he said, as we're driving to Columbus for the meeting to get everything set up the week before we went over, he said, you better enjoy this because it really, really is going to go fast. And that weekend really actually just flew by. It's just amazing how fast that weekend. Jeff Springer, who was my assistant at Bethel, went with me to Sydney, and then I helped him at Wayne with the girls program there, and we've had a couple conversations this year about it, about how quickly those 10 years have gone. Just amazing. You know, we followed Witt and Plunkett as they played in college, followed Brian Schaub as he played baseball at Wright State, went down and watched them play, but it's been 4 or 5 years since they've been out of college to show you how quickly time goes.
I'm going to ask you the question as I remember it now. I don't ever, since that time, and maybe even before, remember anyone having a tournament performance run like Matt Witt. We mentioned Plunkett and Witt. Those are the 2 significant guys, the leaders on that basketball team. 4 or 5 other very good role players, by the way. But boy, Matt Witt had a tournament right through the state, and he enjoyed that experience.
Well, I don't know that I've ever been around a more competitive kid than the Witt kid. Plunkett, pretty darn competitive also. Just absolutely would not lose. Just absolutely. To beat Marion Local, you know, in the regional final, we beat them in overtime down at Miami. Plunkett makes a big shot late in the game over their 6'6" kid that went to Bowling Green, and then Witt makes 2 threes when he was 0 for 5 for the game from 3. Makes 2 threes, a 3 to tie it at regulation, and a 3 to put us ahead in the overtime. That's how you win state tournaments.
Great memories. Back to the future quickly. You're in a very competitive conference. You know this well. Covington, Arcana going to be good again this year. Tri-Village, strength up and down in basketball in the cross-county conference. Where do you fit in with that?
Well, we'd like to see ourselves somewhere in the mid-pack.
I don't want to forget Miami East and Allen Mack.
No, don't want to. I had a conversation with Alan here just recently about the league and things. You know, I think right now, since we're kind of an unknown at this point, we had very, very good scrimmages. Played really, really well in our scrimmages because basically we've really been emphasizing the fact that we've got to keep the tempo down, we've got to defend, and we've got to rebound. And those are 2 things they didn't do very well in the past. Defensively and rebounding has not been 2 things that they've concentrated on. So we really have worked on those things. We played very well in our scrimmages, but you know, scrimmages you're playing 1 quarter at a time. You know, we've got to be able to work through frustrations. Going to have frustrations. We can't let those bad habits come back when we get frustrated. And those are the things that we've really been talking about.
Fish, looking forward to seeing your latest chapter or reading your latest chapter in the coaching lifetime and certainly history of Steve Fisher, head basketball coach of the Newton Indians, our guest this week on Press Pros Magazine. Again, our thanks to the Buckeye Insurance Company for their sponsorship each and every week here on Press Pros, and the Coverman Dickerson Agency representing Buckeye in Troy, Piqua, and Covington. For Coach Fisher and our sponsors, Sunny Folks, again reminding you, we appreciate your support of Press Pros Magazine. See you again next week here on First Person.
If you are looking for quality insurance protection from a reliable company, sold by professionals in communities like yours, that's what you'll get from Buckeye Insurance Group.
Buckeye Insurance Group, insuring the heartland.
To find your local Buckeye agent, visit buckeye-ins.com. Buckeye Insurance Group, insuring the heartland.
Insuring the heartland.